folks. I don't have a gavel down here, but I think we're live now. I'd like to call this workshop for February 24th to order. Before we get going, just a note, we are not being live broadcast tonight, but we are recording still, and it will be posted online once the online function that the school department broke I'm just joking, Katie. Once online gets back up. So I'm going to turn this over to Peter and Katie from the school department to talk about strategic plan and education.
Katie just turned to me and said it's the city's fault. So we're not exactly sure what has created this problem, but we will get it fixed. So the first presentation that we're doing is on the strategic plan regarding education. I think all of you are familiar with the strategic plan. Many of you participated in it. We worked on it for over a year. There were over 100 people involved from the community. It was a very good process. There were 11 recommendations. Sorry, Phil. Okay. And one of the recommendations had to do with education. And Katie and I are going to speak to that. Beautiful. All right, so in terms of the recommendation on education, it's improve the image of schools and increase commitment to and value of education. I know that's something that we all are committed to and want to see happen. We have 3 school resource officers already. We did an update for the council on things that we are already doing as a community regarding these 11 recommendations, including the one on education. There are 3 school resource officers, as I just mentioned. The library has a strong connection to the schools. The General Assistance Office connects New Mainers with adult ed. We have the Work With Me program, the internship program under construction. The internship program is very interesting. We had a meeting on that today. Katie was present, as well as Jim Horn. What we're trying to do is we're trying to develop an internship program for our students, namely high school students, for local government as well as the business sector, to be interns in the community with businesses. Shanna Cox, who's the new CEO for the Chamber of Commerce, was present. Shanna is very enthusiastic about this and has been putting a lot of time and energy and effort into it and is providing staff support as well. Katie can talk about this later in her own words, but I was very encouraged about the meeting today. If you think about it, what a great way to try and address the workforce needs of our community, to keep our young people here, to expose them, give them the opportunity to be able to work in local government as interns in the various departments, to be able to be interns with businesses in the community, and to see the advantages of staying in this community. If they go off to college, then hopefully they'll want to come back and be here and contribute to the community. This next slide are updates that I received from the superintendent, so I'm going to turn the mic over to Katie Grondin.
Yes, thanks for having the school committee tonight and working together collaboratively as we start the budget process. So these are things I sent to Peter, but also there's things when we get into the school's presentation, some more bright spots. But we've really done a lot of work on our social media posts, keeping Facebook up, Twitter feeds up, starting Instagram to really promote a lot of the good things that are going on in the school. So the more we can get the positive narrative out there, the more people can feel good about the school department. We have a bi-monthly Bright Spot newsletter, and I did not print a copy for everyone because it's very lengthy and there's a lot of pictures, but I'll pass it around. Liz Allen pushes it out to the city, people who sign up for the alerts. And then we put it on our Facebook and our social media so that people can tune into it, so you can look at that. There'll be a new edition going out after this week because we did January and February together. We started last year a parent advisory group that Michelle McClellan, the assistant superintendent, and Sue Doris, our principal at East Auburn and our district Title I coordinator, started last year. We're really hearing from parents wanting more of a voice. So we did a parent advisory group that's meeting monthly, bi-monthly on different topics. They had a huge turnout last month on positive behavior intervention support. And they're really designed to give parents information, and then parents give feedback in their school groups. So every school is represented with administrator teachers, and parents join which school they want to hear. Brian, I know you've been part of that. You could speak more to it if you'd like. But this is a way to increase engagement and voice. We've also, as you, expanding opportunity and performance for our advanced placement students. We got a distinguished award this year for our increased participation and equity around having advanced placement classes. So these are things that, especially advanced placement, that those sites like Niche and ICHE, when they are rating us, they pull our advanced placement data. And so that's an area that we've been working on to encourage more participation in taking the exams. This year we're paying for all exams that students are taking that are in advanced placement. Before we used to do partial. So to help out, there's title grant money being put towards helping students with the placement test. That has increased our participation, which will increase our scores on that. Also, we've increased the number of advanced placement classes from 8. We now currently have 8, and next year we hope to have 10. We offer a sophomore advanced placement class for the first time. So we're trying to do things to increase opportunities for all students. Okay. In your folder, as I switch my computer so that the public can see this when they come and they view it later, in the back on the right-hand side is the presentation, and I have provided information which I will point to periodically through, and if I don't, I'll do it at the end. But I'm going to give you kind of a big picture, some things to think about. As this is our first meeting, we're scheduled to have 2 more meetings together, and so this is kind of getting your feet wet. I'm sorry if I'm looking this way. I mean to look at all of you. Okay. The teacher and me, we would make eye contact, make sure everyone's focused. Good. So we're starting with what is the role of the school committee. So right now, you'll hear it's the superintendent's proposed budget. So it begins as the superintendent's proposed budget, and then the school committee starts to examine it, ask questions, give feedback, suggestions, but it starts out as the proposed superintendent's budget. So you'll see that the role of the school committee is to examine the proposed budget, to understand its reasons for its development. It's to listen, ask questions, provide feedback and suggestions. It's to make decisions regarding additions and reductions to budget, to reach a budget that supports a high-quality education for all students with the taxpayer in mind, and to adopt a budget which then becomes a school committee budget that will be presented to the city council. So the school committee has seen a lot of this information because we kicked off last meeting, but I've added some more information. On Wednesday night, they're going to be diving deep into the first cost center, and we'll be explaining what the additions are, what the development of that cost center, and going through other information that has been requested. So that's their job to take it through. The role of the city council, sorry, switching my computer, is to understand the school department's budget development, which is what we're going to do tonight, is understand how it's developed, to understand the budget drivers and the impact on the budget, so you're going to hear some of that, to give direction to the school committee as to the possible tax commitment for the school committee's budget. So often we get feedback about where the city is hoping the school is going to land in their tax commitment, and then approve the bottom line of the budget and approve the referendum to go to the voters in June. So you can decide the bottom dollar, but giving feedback as into items of the budget, that's the role of the school committee, okay? You're more about tax commitment and the bottom line. Any questions on that? So to add to the bright spots, I just put a couple things in here, and of course I could have done layers and layers of it, but this is just to give some things that you might not know, and it kind of goes with the internship that we're embarking on, giving you some information on early college opportunities. We're doing a lot with our students around early college so that when students leave Edward Little High School, they leave with already college credits under their belt. It's more affordable. It allows a parent to then, have an opportunity to go to CM and finish their 2-year degree, or a jump start into a 4-year degree. And it also can give them a taste of what they might want to do, rather than I go to college, I've never had experience, and then after my freshman year, I'm thinking, what am I doing? So it gives them opportunity to explore. So at the University of Maine, we have 4 course offerings. Some of these are dual, so we have teachers that teach classes under an umbrella for a university, so it's our teacher doing a college class. Some of these are online classes that our students can participate in. We have a Bridge Year cohort of 17 students. Bridge Year is a partnership with Lewiston Regional Technical Center. Our teachers dually give college credit. These students do their junior and senior year in this program. It's a very rigorous program, and it gives an opportunity to study together as a cohort, and then they finish high school with their first year of college completed. A lot of positive results, a lot of students that might not have considered college. This is a way for them to get into that pathway where they might have thought they couldn't afford it. This gives them opportunity to get some college classes. We also have 3 course offerings from Central Maine Community College. Thomas College, also 3 course offerings, and then University of Maine Fort Kent course offerings. Those are online. So just to give you that, we have school, and then we have other opportunities we offer, and then this is all the information about the AP District Honor Roll. And then I did want to highlight that all 8 schools improved their overall average in language arts on the MEA scores this past year. And I did include on the left-hand side another bright spot, just so people know. This is a list of all the college acceptances, class of 2019, got into these colleges and university. I thought you can see where our students are getting accepted to college. So a lot for you to see. And I also included in here your student and school data. This was given to the school committee during their retreat, and so it covers our MEA scores. It also, the last 2 slides, talks about the ESSA data dashboard. You, as the public, can get online and you can look at every school. You can look at our school department. It breaks it down by demographics, scores. So you're looking for information on that. I've included that in the packet as well. Okay. The other thing I included on the left-hand side is our focus areas. So you can see this is also the school committee received at their retreat. What do our schools work on? And these are the goals set by our schools on the back side. Just so you know, all the money you're investing, we take seriously about providing high quality education for all of our students. And this is all the heavy lifting we do all year long to make an impact with our students, both academically, social, emotional, all their needs. So this is just to give you a glimpse. This slide shows you that the Auburn School Department employs 608 employees. So we're a large employer in the area. This gives you a count of our district administration, our school administration, bus drivers, custodians, daycare, ed tech, guidance, health assistant, librarian, LPN, maintenance, non-union, our nutrition program, school secretaries, speech, and teachers. So that kind of gives you a glimpse of who we are, because I believe that's our biggest bright spot, obviously, is our staff and all that they do for our students. So now I'm going to dive into how is the budget put together. So the school budget starts with our expenditures, and that's what we're building right now is the budget, which is all the expenditures in order to run a school department with 608 employees and approximately 3,500 students. And cost centers, we have 11 cost centers. The biggest one is cost center 1, which is regular instruction. So whenever you're going to see it come out when you do the referendum, when you're voting on our budget, it's by articles. So I say cost centers, you'll see articles. So Article 1, Article 2. And regular instruction covers anything that students need in their regular instruction, language arts, math, social studies, anything that supports the regular classroom. It also supports alternative ed, our English language learners programs, and our gifted and talented. And then we have Cost Center 2, which is special education. Cost Center 3, we don't receive funds for the career technical education. Lewiston Regional Technical Center directly receives the funds that would go for Edward Little students. They go to the Lewiston School Department. So it funnels through their program. It does not funnel through us. Cost Center 4 is other instruction, which is co-curricular and extracurricular programs. Cost Center 5 is student and staff support, which would include guidance service, health services, technology, improvement to instruction, instructional staff training, library services, student assessment. Cost Center 6 is system administration, which is the superintendent's office, the business manager, business office. Other administrators that are considered central office, like our assistant superintendent, special ed director, they go into their assigned cost center. So Michelle McCullen does a lot with student support services as a truancy officer, as a homeless liaison. So her position you will not see in system administration. You would see it in the cost center, of which she is mostly responsible for. Cost Center 7 is school administration. Cost Center 8 is our transportation department. Cost Center 9 is operations and maintenance. Cost Center 10 is any debt service we have. And Cost Center 11 is other things like crossing guards. Our child nutrition program right now is an enterprise program. It pays for itself. It is not seen as an expenditure in the general fund. There will be more discussion with the school committee level whether we will be adding additional funds for that cost center for nutrition. So that's kind of giving you a breakdown. Every expenditure needs to fit into one of these cost centers. Any questions so far? So this kind of gives you a little history of what we've spent what we've put in our budget for expenditures. So this is what the budget supports. And this is a history just to show you in the regular instruction. This year was budgeted $18.3 million. Special education was $10.5. Other instruction, $834,000 approximately. Student staff support, $4.8 million. System administration, $965,000. School administration, $1.5 million. Transportation, $1.8. Facilities maintenance, $5.1. Our debt service, $742,000. And our all other, which is our crossing guards, $39,000. So our budget this year is $44,955,256. So that's kind of giving you a history of where do most of our money go to, and you would expect it to be most would go into regular instruction. So that's the expenditure side. So revenue, how do you pay for all this? So in the revenue, we have what we receive as state subsidy, which is referred to as the ED 279. So if somebody says, well, what was your ED 279? That is, how did they calculate your state subsidy? Okay. Then we have local tax dollars. We have fund balance dollars we use, and other revenue sources, like state agency clients, special ed SOS tuition, that's our special purpose school at Lake Street, Medicare reimbursement, Franklin tuition, rental properties, childcare, miscellaneous. We do have Lewiston students that attend Franklin on tuition. So how do we get to the state subsidy? It's a formula. And to explain all the nuances of it, you can see it online if you would like. You can look up Auburn's ED 279, and it calculates everything, taking our staff information, it takes our enrollment information, it gives us weighted amounts for locally, our economically disadvantaged, our ELL students, our pre-K students. It gives us our calculation for special ed, gifted and talented, transportation. We bought school buses. When you purchase school buses, you get reimbursed the year after, so you would see that. We are part of a regional service center, so you would see those dollars. So everything's calculated because in order to fairly say distribute it across the dollars, the state dollars, everybody's treated the same way in this calculation, and then it tells you what your state subsidy is. So this is giving you a history. We do know our FY21 state subsidy, which is $26,014,474. You can see that's about a $318,000 or $320,000 increase from last year. That is not significant. That's a minimal increase, which is why I wrote in the note we'll be looking for more of a tax commitment this year. So that's giving you history of our state subsidy. Our history of...
Sorry, I'm sorry,
yes.
Katie, one more, just go back. State subsidy fiscal year 20 versus 21. It's like $65,000. Delta, am I reading that right?
I'm guessing that FY21 doesn't include the $200,000 service.
Oh, that's what I didn't add in. Thank you. I didn't put in the regional service center, so add that in.
Little? I can
You
do
were
that.
very good.
Okay. So
Nice.
plus 200?
Yeah, plus 200. Thank you for, I took the one sheet and didn't go to the last sheet. Thank you, Adam. So yes, we had an increase of 300. Okay. So thank you for that correction. I'll correct that later. Local dollars, you can see that for FY18 and 19, it stayed flat. And then for FY20, there was a reduction of $100,000. So part of it was the school committee really talked a lot about having an increase last year in state subsidy. We had close to $1.5 million in state subsidy increase. And so we put in some key positions that we felt were the highest need. And the school committee really, we talked about with that increase in state subsidy, it would not be fair to go to the community and ask for an increase in tax to get more additional positions or new positions. So we weighed out, we were getting some, but that and to hold the line in the local tax commitment. So that was done intentionally. Also, you'll see fund balance in FY18. So at the end of this school year, and you'll hear when the auditor speaks, the auditor is going to talk about our fund balance. There'll be a slide on that. So that is the money, when you have a $44 million budget, you're going to have money that hasn't been expended. That moves into an undesignated fund balance. And we, as school committee, have used that to balance the budget. So to lower the tax commitment, that fund balance has been used to offset it. What the school committee did in FY19 is try to reduce that, because if you count on $908,000 every year from your fund balance, then you've got to count on it. And that means you've got to watch that expenditure, how much fund balance, one, that you're carrying, one that you're putting towards your taxes to maintain that, because the minute you don't have fund balance, the taxes would have to make that up. All right? But you can see the history on that. And then those other revenue sources, you can see that we had an increase this year. But if you're on the finance committee, these are revenue resources you do your best projection on, and then you have to wait and see what happens with main care reimbursement, with tuition. So there's a lot of, you can't say absolutely you will get those revenues. You project out. So there'll be adjustments on what happened this year with our revenue projections and what will that look like for next year. So this sheet on your right-hand side gives a whole history of the school department's revenues. So this is a complete picture of how much state subsidy, how much are the other revenue, how much we use with fund balance, what was the general fund, well, how much is adult education play into that, and then you'll see what our total budgets were. Then you'll see how much the mill rate for education, how much the tax commitment is. So this gives you a big picture since 2013, the history. So how does the superintendent propose a budget come together? Well, a lot is done in the business office between Adam Hansen, his business manager, Jackie Smith. They all work together to make sure we're looking at all of our contracts because some things are set in your contracts. We do those increases. We talk to city manager about non-union. We look at what other positions comparable are receiving for increases to determine that. We look at our insurance increase. So we are putting a 10% insurance increase in there. We won't know until end of March, April, approximately what will be. But the minute we know, we have to make an adjustment to our budget. We work with our principals and directors, and we tell them you're always starting your budget at zero. It's always based on what do you need. So looking at your programming, look on your return on investment, looking on what you already have for materials. If you already still have some everyday math books, let's not buy more. So we're looking at everything that they have and need to provide education for their students in the classroom, and they build their budgets, and the directors build their budgets. And then Adam and I meet with each director, and we go line by line in every single budget. And we talk about why are you up, why are you down, what do we see as your history and your budget development. And we talk about where is their budget currently, what are they going to need in June. So there's a lot of discussion, principal and director with Adam and I, so that we have a clear understanding of what they're asking for. We use budget filters. As I said, we start with a zero base to address needs for teaching and learning. It's not necessarily wants. Believe me, the budget would be very large if we said, I really want this, I think this would make a huge difference, but isn't needed. So we really use that filter, knowing that we want to be fiscally responsible as well, and they all understand that when they're building their budget. We talk about whether we're having a strong return on investment on things that we've implemented. We talk about the school committee budget priorities. So the school committee, and that's in your folder on the right, the school committee engaged in activity on February 5th to talk about their priorities. So as you see in Cost Center 1, a lot of the things they listed as priorities, we will be discussing more on Wednesday night related to Cost Center 1. For example, class sizes, we'll be talking about ELL, we'll be talking about interventionist, those type of things. So that all comes to play in Cost Center 1. There must be people coming in, I see a lot. And so that's considered. And then obviously our connection to Vision 2030 is also considered. Some of the anticipated budget drivers this year is obviously, like everything, when you have 600 employees, you're going to have increase in salaries. I already spoke about increase in health insurance, increase in positions based on needs and priorities. And then we also had revenue decrease at the state level with a state subsidy due to decrease in enrollment. So what happens is on October 1st, they pull our enrollment. Everybody, it's the same date, October 1st. So you could have 10 kids move in the following, in November, they go by October 1st. So there isn't an adjustment to that. So these are our October 1st enrollment. We had a decrease in disadvantaged subsidy, which was a loss of $257,000, a loss, but that was the difference from this year to next year. So we had less count for disadvantaged.
So can you just expand on that a little bit more on that one?
So economic disadvantage, they are your free and reduced. And so we collect that information. Those students are flagged as in receiving free and reduced, and so then that goes to the state, and that comes in on our subsidy as a weighted. So if we have less students that are qualifying for disadvantage, we receive less funds.
So the counter to that is there's more, you could argue that average income from a family standpoint is increased.
You could say that, yes.
Okay.
And I would say encouraging everyone to do the census, right? Because
For 1,001 different ways.
exactly. So that's a good, and the students we lost, off the enrollment could have been disadvantaged. So what happens a lot of times is a disadvantaged student can count in 3 categories. So
Could you
we had an
possibly-
increase in pre-K students.
Could you possibly give us, not today, but as a follow-up, a little bit more data on the decrease in enrollment?
Yep.
And if there's any, without names, of course, if there's any overlap into disadvantage? Just in total numbers.
I probably can't,
Cross-reference.
I probably won't be able to do that because NEO pulls them in. So, and it's a different data source, but,
Or maybe just a number of decrease in disadvantage subsidies, because we have your
yeah,
decrease in
I can
enrollment.
get you that, yes.
That would give us a little bit of an indication, because as we're starting to see economic data showing that the average income
Yeah.
in Auburn is increasing,
Yeah.
this could be a result of that.
Yeah.
Or side effect,
Yeah,
if you will.
no, I hear what you're saying. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. And then we received a minimal increase state subsidy. Am I doing it right with time? Okay. Any questions? Yes, Tim?
So, is that voluntary information, the disadvantage subsidy paperwork? Is that stuff that is volunteered,
It
or
is-
is that stuff that is mandatory?
It is. Now, yes.
What's the percentage of people who fill that out compared to the total in general?
Well,
Because could that also cost us
it
disadvantage
it can.
subsidy? Okay.
We don't do well at the middle school and high school,
Okay.
to be honest, because we could be high at the elementary, and then that we see a decrease as the middle school and high school of filling the forms out and doing that. Our lunch people do an outstanding job. We have East Auburn and Fairview who we need to have the forms in for qualification. The other they have to fill out the paperwork as well, Park Avenue, Sherwood Heights, Walton, and Washburn. But we also get the numbers from DHHS for them because it's universal. But at Fairview and East Auburn, if a family is struggling to pay their bill, that's the conversation is. We're also finding families are just above the threshold in the free and reduced. So that can be, but yes, we do decline as the middle school and the high school.
Okay, thanks.
Katie, I have a question. So you said it's because the decline for AMS and EL is because people aren't filling out the forms anymore. Is there a way that we can help fix that?
Yeah.
That they are filling out the forms, or have someone work on that so that we
Oh,
do
yeah,
that?
they get notification of it. The bills often show it too, as people, or when they're charging or when they're asking. So trying to work with the families about that, yes. It wouldn't impact this to a large degree because you can see the 9 through 12 was 18.5 students and the K-8 was 36.5. So it could be Auburn Middle School or not. I just know that on average, we're 50% free and reduced. Our district's about 51% qualify. So depending on which students moved in, which students out, it's gonna impact the count.
There's some variables.
There's different variables.
We'll continue until you're finished, and we can
Okay.
open it up to some more.
Can I just
There's
point-
a good, obviously, topical questions. So.
I just want to point out one thing, that when we're talking about families being just over the threshold, we've
Yeah.
had a lot of change in the minimum wage. So that could be something that, yes, all salaries are increasing, but we also need to think about how that, small bit of impact is to, these disadvantaged families.
Trust in the state and, their infinite knowledge and wisdom to adjust. That's sarcasm right there. Because I have no
so-
faith in the legislature at all. Quote,
So
unquote.
anyways, I guess maybe, I don't even know if it's possible, but to compare some of that data maybe from families that were, that qualified versus after, these, I don't even know if there's a way to truly
It's hard.
compare those, but it would be interesting to find out.
I do know that came up, is some parents or families are just above and we keep an eye on that.
Still a
It
shame.
is, it is. I agree with you. So shifting from budget for a minute, there are two things I want to address that have come to my attention. The first is, I've heard there's chatter on social media regarding the Portland construction project and comparing it to the Edward Little project. So I just want to have some facts out there to make sure that if you're getting questions, that you also have the information. So I spoke to Mark Lee, one of our architectures, and I also, is he here? And I asked Mark to be here tonight in case there were additional questions. I talked to Scott Brown. Scott Brown is the Department of Education person who helps work with us. So to be clear, to compare the Portland construction to Edward Little is comparing apples to oranges. Okay? So first of all, the Portland project, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Portland project is 4 old schools being renovated, very different. So when you're cost estimating projects like that, there are some unknown variables that it's hard to account for sometimes when it's an older project. Also in Portland, they approved their referendum and then did not go out to bid for close to 3 years. That does put a differential in the bid process. We went to referendum in June, and within 14 months, we will be out to bid. So that is more of a accurate time period that you do these projects. Also, as Scott Brown said, those budget numbers, no one has, Mark Lee and I did not sit in a back room and decide what the budget numbers were going to be. I get insulted when I'm questioned on the integrity of the work that's being done, when we have such a great team and the building facilities team working so hard on this project. This has been monitored, supervised, accounted for. The experts, Harriman, we count on them to do their job. We have a contract with Harriman that they are to keep the project within the voted budget, the budget that the Department of Ed State School Board has committed to, and that the local taxpayers have committed to. That is their job, to keep refiguring cost estimates as we go through this process. Right now, we're in the design, paper design, construction papers portion, which is Harriman is ongoing calculating the cost of this project as designs are solidified. So as we do the Performing Arts Center, as we're doing the gymnasium, as we're doing every part of this building, they're updating their cost estimates, and they know they must stay in the budget. So if things have to be refigured, redesigned, that's what their job is. We're due to the state board again to keep them updated on that information. So I said to Scott Brown, what's worst case scenario? And next fall we come out and it's more. He said they would sit down, he said very rare, but if it was to happen, we would sit down with the bids, we would go over every fine detail of that bid, what was bidded, what was the response to that. We would be working as a team to get that budget where it needs to be, where the voters and the state board approved. And so they do these projects. They've done hundreds of projects. These are state projects. They know what they're doing. They're watching. They're calculating. And I have full confidence that Harriman, who we hired and have a contract with, are doing what they need to do to keep us in that budget. So to compare to Portland is a whole different project, a whole different set of things. Okay? So I want to assure you, because I could tell people were nervous and, oh, now what's going to happen? We're not going to get the EL we voted. We are. Okay? And it's our job as a team, as a community, to keep working together and trust the team, trust the experts that are working on this.
Katie, thank you. Just
welcome.
to clarify, it was an article written in the Sun Journal based upon conjecture by former elected officials on social media. Not a single elected member of the Auburn City government, I think, was called, consulted, or quoted, nor staff on your end. So it's I know, and I'm glad you said.
I'm doing it for the public.
I know, and I'm glad you said that, and I'm a little discouraged that anything that is written on social media is all of a sudden newsworthy, with certain reporters at least. But I'm glad you clarified that. So keep us posted, of course, on that, and open dialogue would be great.
And
Now, of
that-
course, not the one that's sitting in the audience. It was a different one. I'd call him out if it was him.
No, but I agree with you. When I got the call and I thought, interesting. The last thing is on fundraising. The fundraising efforts are continuing. I put in your packet, the school committee endorsed this naming rights opportunities. Pat Gucci and Bonnie Hayes have stepped up to lead fundraising efforts. We're meeting again tomorrow. Anyone is welcome to attend. It's at 5 o'clock tomorrow before the building committee meeting. And so it is, we did commit to 3 to 5 million. We're going to push hard for that. There's still asks going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of work and energy on this. So I want to also let you know that and for you to have this paper. It hasn't been officially rolled out because there's a lot of pieces to this, but this did go to the school committee, so I wanted you to know about it. Okay? Keep everybody in the loop. I think I've talked enough. Any questions?
Thank you very much. We do have some time, which is great. This is very thorough, and I do appreciate how you tied this into our strategic plan, because that's important. It's our guiding document for the city council and city administration. I would like to open this up to some questions from the council and school committee, of course, though with time, you know,
You have
obviously.
about, yeah.
Yeah, about 15 minutes before we have audit. I would like to start off with the city council if we could, just because the school committee, you'll have plenty of time. So we'll have limited amount. So any councilors have any questions at this time for Councilor Lasagna?
Mayor, having been involved in the process the whole time, I have complete confidence in Harriman and the group being able to fulfill what the contract is, and thank you for saying that. In terms of the fundraising, I think at some point it would be good to go back and talk about how this money was planned to be used, because I think it's unclear to people what the plans were for the fundraising. So that would be great whenever that comes forward. Thank you.
Right, because I did hear, yeah, the fundraising is to reduce the local commitment to the project.
Right, so,
Correct.
so it would be good to,
I hear you.
Councilor Milks?
What is the fundraising goals?
3 to
And
5 million,
3 to 5 million?
yes.
And by when? And do we have a goal, like, is there a time frame?
Well, I mean, it's hard when there isn't a big group. There's 4 of us working on it. I know, and Peter can speak to it, he and I spoke, and the city manager has put in a fundraising position into the city's budget to support the efforts. And so, obviously, the first goal is when the project goes on to the bond. That would be the first goal. And then anything after that, you can put towards it at any time. It doesn't have to be once the bond is that it? No, you can keep putting it towards the bond payment. So in the next year, I mean, that's the work right now, is once we can get the naming rights stuff out, keep talking to individuals, that's the work we're doing now. And hopefully if the city, and you stepped out for a minute. I mentioned you putting in the fundraiser position. And Peter can talk to that, to have support for it. You know, that's what we're doing.
So there's no deadline today set to have the 3 to 5 million?
No.
Okay.
Is there any other questions? None being, okay. School committee, of course. Ask a question. Thank you for that. Anybody from the school committee? No? Okay, so again, thank you for this. There is certain, let me just summarize here. You have a couple asks in this presentation specifically for the city council. We need to, within the next, I'm going to say about a week to 2 weeks, 2 weeks to 3 weeks, give you direction. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Peter or Katie. Give you direction on bottom line numbers, increase, decrease, whatever we feel is necessary as a council. That is something that we will do. We will make sure we have time on our agenda through workshop and action to present to you our direction on that. I will say from a general history, the last couple of years as a council, our goal has been to keep the increase in mill rate, very, very important mill rate, at less than the cost of inflation, or CPI-U. So, which has been, I think last year was 2.1% CPI-U. Yeah, right, plus or minus a tenth of, yeah, so fairly close to that. But that was historical, but we will get you some answers going forward. So thank you very much for this. And if we have any further questions or clarity, especially on enrollment and cost drivers, can we email You directly, Peter, will go through or copy? Okay, very good. We'll do that then over the next couple of weeks. Thank you very much. At this point, we have an audit, but I'm just going to give everybody about a 5-minute stretch. Let's take a pause or break here for about 5 minutes before we start into the audit. Thank you. Can I have your attention? Okay, folks, we're back from recess. I'd like to call the workshop back to order. Next on the agenda is our financial audit. I'm going to turn this over to Jill Eastman, our finance director for the city of Auburn, and Adam Hansen, finance director for the school department, to take it from here.
I'd like to introduce to you Tim Gill and Casey Leonard from Running Kirsty Willette. They're our two partners that worked on our audit, and they will be giving you a short presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, the key word being short, because those reports that you have in front of you are pretty thick, so they would take a long time to go through them in great detail. So what we have in front of you is the nice graphical presentation, nice, colorful, short, concise. We're going to kind of summarize everything into one little package. So tonight what we're going to go over briefly is mostly the general fund. We're really not going to talk about the special revenue funds, things, the grants of that nature. We're going to talk about the general fund where most of the activity of the city and the school department flows through. We're going to go over the summary of the audit results, discuss some of our recommendations, some of our findings for compliance, and then we're going to dive a little bit into the revenues and expenditures and break those down to a little bit detail, again, all for the general fund. So if we go to page 2 of the presentation, you'll see a summary of the audit results. Reminder. And so the first thing you'll see there is a financial statement opinion. Our job as auditors is to give an opinion on the financial statements and to express that opinion about whether the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. I use that terminology in all material respects to indicate that what we do is basically sample-based testing. And so that means basically there's a margin of error built into the procedures that we do. We do a risk-based approach to kind of get a sense of where we think there might be issues. And we look at your internal controls, and as a result of that, we're able to give you our audit opinion, but also give you some of the recommendations that we're about to go over in the next few bullet points here. But your financial statement opinion is unmodified, which is exactly what you want to see. That means that we do believe your financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. So one of the reports that you have in front of you is the reports required by government auditing standards. This is where we go over our testing of internal control a little bit. I mentioned we do that as part of our risk assessment process, but as a result of that process, we can also offer you some recommendations about your internal controls and offer you some suggestions to improve operating efficiency and to minimize risk within the city and the school department. When we give you those recommendations, we're required to classify them into 3 different categories, material weakness being the most severe category, then a significant deficiency is the next level down, and then finally there's just general recommendations. We have no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies to report. We do have several other comments, the first being city accounting software and school accounting software reconciliation. We came in sometime in late August. The reconciliation was done, but then there were some late entries made on the school side, and normally those types of entries flow back and forth within the accounting software, but at some point there was a glitch and it wasn't quite talking to each other correctly. So the final reconciliation really wasn't completed until December. So we suggested implementing procedures on a monthly basis to kind of tighten up that process so that the city and school information is talking to each other, the software is talking to each other a little more precisely. The second comment we have here is related to the school department, specifically Edward Little High School and the activity funds. We test the activity funds every year because it's a place where we find a lot of risk. A lot of times you have school secretaries who are handling cash and cutting checks. There's a lack of segregation of duties in those areas, so we tend to focus on those every year. At the Edward Little High School, we found 7 of 40 deposits were not deposited timely. There is a policy in place that says deposits have to get to the bank within 10 days of collection. 7 out of 40 that we tested didn't meet that requirement. Anytime you're holding on to cash longer, it's more at risk for people to kind of dip their hands in there and take it. Oh, I need to go buy some pizza for this lunch or whatever it may be, I'll replace it. And they forget to replace it. So the longer you hold on to cash, the more risky it becomes. So we suggest getting those funds into the bank in a timely manner. Similarly, at the Auburn Middle School, we found the same issue. 7 out of 40 deposits were not timely. So again, we recommend those funds get into the bank as soon as possible. Next bullet point was grant receivables. We found that we had to make significant entries to record grant receivables at year end, specifically the MDOT receivable and CDBG grant money receivables at year end. They were significant dollar amounts. This was funds that had not been requested yet from the granting agency, but they were eligible to be reimbursed. So we just wanted to make you aware that there should be a procedure in place to recognize those funds at year end. Any questions so far? Am I going too fast?
So for MDOT and CDBG, those were funds that were expended but had not yet been invoiced
Correct.
to receive? Thank you.
And one question. You've been doing our audit now for how many years?
Casey, a long time.
At least several. Okay. Are you seeing any trends during that period of time? Things that have been recommended to be cleared up? Because I believe the activity funds popped up last year as well. So are you seeing any repeat offenders?
Activity funds is always a repeat offender, and probably will always continue to be a repeat offender, because the second you get somebody trained in your policy procedures, there's usually turnover, and then you're going to find some more errors the next year. That's definitely a common repeat offender at school districts across the
Is
state.
there anything else?
Not in terms of what's presented here, no. All the other ones are new, and I haven't seen it in the past. I mean, I've been involved in audits from 2012, and I don't think I've seen these comments before, so.
Okay, very good.
Mayor Levesque, if I could just address that real quickly. I just wanted everyone to know that we have taken steps on the items that recommendations were made on. As far as the software reconciliation, Jackie Smith in our business office has been working very closely with Jill over the last 6 months, and I believe they've taken steps to significantly improve that process. It's being reconciled every month, and I don't foresee an issue with that moving forward. The middle school deposits, as Tim alluded to, that tends to pop up. Our goal is to eliminate that and hopefully not continue to have that comment. We have met with the principal and secretary from each school and reiterated the procedures. I can assure you the principals are 100% on board in trying to improve this. In fact, I'll be visiting an upcoming Edward Little coaches meeting with the principal to stress the importance of the timeliness of processing the cash and checks. So we're going to continue to work to improve those processes.
The next thing on our list here is falls under the reports required by the uniform guidance. This is where we talk a little bit about our testing of your grant funds, your federal funds that you receive. Every year we come in, we're required to look at what's called a major program. There's a little calculation we do to determine what is a major program. This year we tested 3 different programs that are considered a major program. The Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, Title I-A, and the Local Entitlement Cluster. Within Title I-A and Local Entitlement, we had no findings. Within the CDBG grant, we did find one finding for inaccurate reporting, and this basically boils down to that there was some turnover in that department during the year. The people responsible for reporting were new. Within that grant specifically, there are 3 different accounting systems they actually report in. There's a GMS loan program that they report in. There's an IDIS accounting software that they report in that the HUD department requires them to use. And then there's the Munis program, which the city uses. So every time they get information in, they have to basically log it 3 times. And so there was inconsistencies, some of it due to timing of when they logged it in one system versus when they logged it into the other system. But there were some inconsistencies in reporting attributed to that. Now we're going to talk about some of the actual accounting figures here. First thing we have presented is the general fund balance. Have a little analysis, a 5-year analysis showing you kind of the trends of where your fund balance is. Your fund balance basically being your assets minus your liabilities, everything that's left over. And we're required to kind of report that into 5 different categories: non-spendable, restricted, assigned, unassigned. There's a 5th category, committed. There's none reported here for that category. But basically, non-spendable is exactly what it sounds like. It's not in spendable form, so you can't use it to fund anything. That would include long-term receivables, prepaid expenditures, things that aren't liquid. Then there's restricted items, things that are restricted by law or restricted by grant requirements. In this case, the restricted amount for this year is entirely the education allotment. The assigned category is things that are assigned or designated by the council or the school board for specific purposes to be used in future years. In that $2 million figure that you see for 2019, there's just over $500,000 assigned for the subsequent budget to reduce the burden on the taxpayers in the next year. There's a $1 million reserve for self-insurance in that assigned figure. Also about $410,000 for encumbrances, basically items that were scheduled to be purchased but haven't been completed until the next fiscal year. But this chart is a little deceiving because it kind of goes backwards a little bit, but if you look at it, you are trending in the right direction for your fund balance. Your fund balance is trending upwards. It took a slight dip this year, but for the most part, the trend is going upwards. And you'll see that your unassigned portion, which is not restricted, you can use that for whatever you want, is actually growing. That's a good sign. This next page is the general fund revenues, showing a little comparison of budget to actual. What you'll see here, the big things that kind of jump out at you is that the taxes appear to be under budget. Well, this is really due to an accounting change. The change in deferred property taxes gets offset to this account, so that's kind of explains the variance there. The other big things that kind of jump out at you is the intergovernmental is actually over budget. In this case, revenues being over budget is a good thing due to higher than expected school subsidy as well as higher homestead and BETE reimbursements. BETE and homestead aren't really known during the budget process. So those things tend to be kind of best guess, as are most budget figures, but in this case, it worked out to your favor. Use of surplus for the city and the school. These are placeholders, so you'll never actually see actual revenues here. That's you budgeting to use your fund balance that we talked about in the last slide to kind of help reduce that tax burden to the citizens of the city. So you'll never actually see a revenue in the actual column there. And if you want more information on that, you can look at Statement 6 in the capper, which is on page 36. That'll break it down into a little more detail.
Is there, in terms of the surplus carry forwards, is there a kind of a rule of thumb in terms of what percentage that should be or what amount that should be?
Not
No,
really.
not
It's up to the management's judgment, really. There is no best practice recommendation for that.
Holly, do you mean in terms of how much is used or how much you have?
How much
in
you
unassigned
save,
fund
how much you
balance?
have on hand?
I'll let Peter, the city manager, after this. There is a range, or Jill, if you have that range. I know the bond agencies recommend a certain percentage.
As far as fund balance, we have a policy, the city has a policy that says unassigned fund balance is 12.5%, should be
right.
12.5%.
We have a graph on it, yeah, in a few minutes.
I thought you were referring to the amount being used in each year. So there is no best practice for that. As far as what you should have in your actual fund balance, there is a recommendation, and then Casey will talk about that in a little bit. For general fund expenditures, again, the same thing, the budget actual presentation here. General government was under budget. In this case, under budget is a good thing. Lower than expected costs related to economic development, lower than expected wages and benefit increases. 9 times out of 10, if you realize savings in any one category, it's usually related to wages and benefits because that's your number one expense. Education, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next couple slides. Other appropriations were under budget due to an unused reserve, so that was kind of built into the budget, but luckily didn't need to be used. Public safety, again, realized some savings due to lower than expected EMS transport costs. So all in all, about $2.6 million under budget for the year, which is good, which adds to that fund balance, helps you build up some reserves, which could be used for, to offset future taxes or for capital expenditures in the future.
So for the next few graphs that we have here, we're actually breaking out the school department. So from the two prior graphs that Tim talked about, we're kind of carving out the school. So this first one here shows general fund revenues, and again, it's just for the school. In total, school department revenues were over budget by about $194,000. Some of the larger variances are mentioned here. Intergovernmental revenues were over budget by about $274,000. And that was primarily due to higher than expected Maine care and state agency client reimbursements, as well as the receipt of additional high-cost out-of-district funds. And charges for services were under budget by about $89,000, and that was primarily due to lower than expected adult education and SOS tuitions. Similar to what we saw in the citywide presentation, there is a use of fund balance. It was $719,000. No actual amount because, again, you're using fund balance. You're using resources that you actually have. It's not a new revenue source, per se. On graph 7, we have a budget to actual comparison just for the school department for expenditures. In total, expenditures are about $851,000 under budget. And again, some of the larger variances. Regular instruction expenditures were under budget by about $91,000, and that was primarily due to the hiring of new teachers at lower rates. So when the 2019 budget was put together, it was put together based on the staffing that existed at that moment in time. Inevitably, you have teachers that leave, and they tend to be replaced by individuals who have less experience, and so they tend to be lower on the pay scales. And so there's some savings that happens as part of that. Student and staff expenditures were under budget by about $168,000, and that was due to the elimination of the grant writer position, salary and benefit savings, and the state paying for the frontline absence management software, which the school department had budgeted for. And facilities maintenance expenditures were under budget by about $381,000, and that was due to lower than expected repair, electricity, and construction contingency costs. So just some of the highlights in terms of the variances.
Question, where does that $850,000 get put back into funds or whatever? What happens?
It lapses to fund balance at the end of the year. So it essentially gets carried forward on your balance sheet from year to year.
Okay, thank you.
Graph 8 shows unassigned fund balance as a percentage of budget. So this is one of those metrics that we look at every year to determine if a community is financially healthy. We generally recommend 1 to 2 months worth of expenditures, which equals 8.3 to 16.7%. And when we did that calculation for 2019, that equaled about 9.27%. So you're in the range of what we usually recommend. Just generally speaking, I think the town or the city is in a pretty good position. You don't have any large, one single taxpayer. You have a good, broad residential, commercial tax base. Your collection on current property taxes is very good. It's about 98%. So I think you're in a pretty good position. As Jill mentioned a minute ago, the city does have a fund balance policy. It's to maintain 12.5% of general fund expenditures as measured on a basis consistent with generally accepted accounting principles. So as opposed to comparing to the budget, the city's policy is to compare to actual expenditures. And so when we did that calculation for 2019, that equaled about 9.45%. So you are short of what your policy is requiring. So you may want to consider that going forward in terms of the budget process and the way that you manage your fund balance, really. I think it's been under that 12.5% for probably 3 or 4 years at this point, maybe longer.
Have we ever hit it pre-recession?
We had it,
Yeah.
it was really high, and then they used quite a bit, and we've been just trying to get it back up where it belongs, a little at a time, because of the economy the way it is, we can't do huge amounts, but I've been trying a little bit at a time.
That's reflective
And
of
each year it's gotten a little higher, or, this past year, it stayed about the same, but, we were down as low as 6.5. So we've gained quite a bit. and I continue to do that. You know, I'll let you know during the budget process how I do that.
I'd like to maybe, and maybe you know this. That was my question. How do we compare our municipalities with regards to fund balance as a percentage of expenditures? What's the norm? I mean, obviously, we're in the range that you'd like to see. We have a policy that is higher end in that range that we haven't hit in near memory here. I think the question I'm getting to is, do we need to reevaluate or relook at our policy with regards to fund balance?
So if you just look at unassigned fund balance as a percentage of budget, I think you're in a pretty good place. I mean, we see anything from 3% to in the 20s. In terms of a policy, it's probably a little bit on the higher side than what we usually say. It's probably a little bit closer to 10. I think that would be pretty common. Do you have a sense? What do you usually see? I think I generally see lower numbers.
A lot of places we go to don't have a formal policy in
That's true.
place. So the fact that you have that, one, is a good thing. But I think I would agree with Casey is that most places are probably in the 10% range. You guys are a little bit higher than that, but I don't think it's unreasonable by any means.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Number 9 shows a revenue distribution. So this schedule shows the two single largest revenue sources for the city, that being taxes and intergovernmental revenues. Together, they make up about 97% of all the revenues received in 2019. So taxes include your real estate and personal property taxes, but it also includes excise taxes. And then intergovernmental revenues primarily represent state education subsidies, state revenue sharing, and Betty and homestead reimbursements. Now, usually, for a lot of our clients, when we've included this presentation, we've seen trends going in one way or the other. There's not really a strong trend here. You saw in terms of 2018 to 2019, your taxes decreased as a portion of the total by about 3%. Intergovernmental increased by about 2%, but there's not a strong trend. I mean, we have a lot of clients where we present this, and each and every year it's going in one direction. That's not really the case for the city of Auburn.
Stable is good.
Yes. Yeah, I think it is good. Yeah. Graph 10 shows a revenue distribution for property taxes. So this graph shows the breakdown of property taxes between the municipal side of the city and the school department side. In 2019, about 61% of the property taxes went towards the city, and 39% went towards education. Now, similar to the graph that I just showed you, not really a strong trend in one direction or the other. If you look at 2015, the city represented about 61%. In 2019, just about 61%. Same thing with education, at about 39, 38%, somewhere in that range. But not a strong trend in either direction.
Be interesting to note that in 2018, that it decreased for the city and increased for the education. So the 2018, 2017-ish are kind of outliers historically.
A little bit, yeah.
Still really trends 60-40 a lot, so pretty close, yeah.
So on page 11, we have the nice pie chart here of the general fund expenditures, showing you basically where you're spending your money. And it should come as no surprise that education gets most of it. This is the case with most towns and cities in the state. So that's always going to be your number one expenditure category. Usually number 2 is something to do with public safety. In this case, it's actually general government, which includes, the finance department, human resources, a bunch of other administrative things, benefit costs, things of that nature. And then number 3 here is actually public safety, so at 11.62%. Other appropriations, that one is mostly made up of your debt service, so that's a pretty high one compared to some of the other categories. But the thing I like to point out is that it's kind of hard to do, at least electronically, but if you have a paper copy, you could almost rip off the next page and then compare it to the current year. So, because right now we're looking at 2019, and on page 12 is 2018. If you were to take those two and compare them, you'd see almost no change from year to year. I mean, you're talking less than 1% change in any one category. So you're pretty consistent in where you're spending your money. There were no big changes, no big surprises in 2019 compared to 2018. So that's all we really have for you tonight. So we took a very big report and some other small reports that we've given you, condensed it down into 12 pages. I know we went over it pretty fast. I'll give you a chance to ask any more questions, but I would encourage you that if you want more detail, the CAFR is very detailed. Read the management discussion and analysis section. That'll give you kind of a quick oversight of the city as a whole for the year. And then the notes into the financial statements will give you a lot more detail if you want it. So if there's any further questions, we'll take those now.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate it. And thank you, Jill and Adam, for your hard work on this, too.
Thank you.
Folks, we're going to stand in recess. And, well, before we do that, I'd like to thank the school committee for being here with the joint workshop. It's a pleasure, as always. Go out there and make kids smart. And thank you very much. We'll talk soon, I'm sure. Okay, we'll stand adjourned until our regular council meeting at 7.
said him and you and me.
Oh, really?
So, no paper shop.
I didn't hear what she said.
Karen up there too.
Yeah, I guess so.
We're like coffee. Feels like a...
Hi.
I don't know, I think there's a little more room, isn't there?
Isn't there?
Oh, where's my?
Oh, gosh.
See, I'm gonna have to.
Huh?
There's too much stuff here in my notes.
Yeah, I know.
What do you have an extra pen?
We'll start selling it to the...
Ryan.
Under the table. You have to get under.
Good evening, folks. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting of February 24th, 2020. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good evening. As a reminder, this is not being televised live, though we will be posting this on the website as soon as it becomes functional. Going to make some slight modifications to the agenda today. The first thing we're going to do is take one executive session, and at the end of the meeting, we're going to move it to right now. So at this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss a personal matter pursuant to 1 MRSA, Section 405(6)A.
So moved. Second.
I've got a motion from Councilor Gary and a second from Councilor Walker. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? None being? Great. This should only take about 5 minutes. Very, very short. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have consent items. We actually have 4 of them. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent items as listed.
So moved.
Second.
I've got a motion from Councilor Boss and a second from Councilor McLeod. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, none being. Consent items are approved by a vote of 6-0. Just so the record notes that Councilor Carrier is absent today. Next, we have the minutes from the February 3rd, 2020 regular council meeting. Are there any corrections to the minutes? No? Entertain a motion.
Motion to accept.
Motion from Councilor, I got a motion from Councilor Walker and a second from Councilor Milks. All those in favor? 6-0. Next, we're going to be moving on to communication. Auburn School Department Revolving Renovation Fund Loan. Mr. Hanson? Mr. Hanson? Okay.
Okay. Good to see you all again. Thanks for letting us talk for a few minutes about the opportunity we have with school revolving renovations funds from the Department of Education. We applied last fall for 2 projects. There had not been any funding available through this program for several years. The state put some money in it last year. There were some restrictions around what type of projects you could apply for. And so reviewing our list and what we could possibly do, we submitted 2 projects. One to add a fully 3-stop elevator at Franklin School to replace their lift, which is reaching the end of its life, and to also renovate the both sets of bathrooms on the bottom level, which are not ADA compliant, and make those ADA compliant. The other project is to redesign the front of Auburn Middle School, redesign the entrance to meet current safety standards. When the school was designed 40 years ago, it certainly did not meet the standards that we have today. And so we were very pleased to learn at the end of January that we were approved for both of those projects. And the way the funding works is this is an interest-free loan with 61% forgiveness. So we will be paying back only 39% of these bonds over 10 years with no interest. And so for the middle school, we were approved for $190,000, and for Franklin School, $1 million. And so between the 2 projects, the amount we need to pay back over 10 years is about $464,000. And so that'll be about $46,000 per year to get those projects done. So we're very excited to take advantage of those funds. Because it is bonds issued by the city, there's a process around that. There'll be a first reading March 2nd, public hearing, and second reading on March 16th. And if it passes that hurdle, then we'll be good to move forward. We'll be selecting architects and then putting those projects out to bid. Hoping to do the middle school this summer and Franklin the following summer. So any questions on that?
Yes, please. Just to clarify, this was listed on the approved CIP for last year's budget?
So the Franklin project is on the list. The middle school project is not. One of the categories that was allowable for these funds was safety, school safety. And so we met with our safety consultant, Scott Parker, met with Billy Hunter, toured the buildings and said, is there anything we could or should be doing to try to take advantage of these funds? And the middle school entrance really stood out as something that should be addressed. And we decided since this was a chance to hopefully get some funds for safety, we applied and we were approved for that. So that one's not on the list, the Franklin one is.
Yeah, I was just curious as to, since that one was not on the approved CIP, is there a protocol in place now to have the school committee or city council, city manager as well, put this on? In other words, I just want to make sure that it's an approved expenditure and not a backdoor way to expend money. Not doubting the need, if you would, but was it on the 5-year CIP projections?
No, it was not on the list at all. It was a project that we developed after consulting with our consultant, realizing that school safety was one of the available uses of these funds.
Yeah, so not everything, it's not like you have to have the expenditure approved before. These are funds that school departments look at the categories. And so looking at some of the things on the CIP list currently the one at Franklin was the one that we thought definitely would qualify, and then the other things would not qualify. So safety, where we have, and Auburn Middle School is not the only one that could use an office design. We've been talking about other of our offices that, you know, you can't see when you're buzzing in. So trying to configure our different schools that were built before these times. This one, because of the middle school and having double entrances on both sides, well, exit and so forth, and the office being way on the other side, so when people come through, they have immediate access. So that's why that one was selected.
My question isn't about the merit of the project
Yeah.
at all. My
No, I
question
just
is
want to
about
explain the
protocol.
public, yeah.
Mr. Manager?
Doesn't have-
Yeah, I think in terms of the protocol, and I'm sure, I know the finance director for the city supports this. I think this is fine in terms of what they're doing. As Adam just outlined, you'll find it on the council order for next meeting, and the first reading, and then the meeting on the 16th would be the second reading, so you have a chance to be able to vote on this, to approve it. I certainly hope that you will support it. People talk about government not being entrepreneurial. I think this is entrepreneurial. You're being flexible and adaptive, and you've seized an opportunity to address an issue.
I am going to, we've talked about putting an item on the school committee agenda for our next meeting to sort of have the school committee approve moving this proposal onto the city council, just to sort of formalize that request. And then I believe with the 2 hearings, that would be the formal approval.
Very good. Councilor Zanya?
I was just going to say that we have done this in the past with funds that have come forward that were not in the CIP that we decided were best used. Senior Center being one of them.
We have, okay. Very good. Well, we have 2 readings. I agree with you on the bringing it up to the school committee to at least get their way in, their opinion on this as well. Any other questions?
I got one. Who has done the investigation on that school up there to say that this renovation for a new elevator and whatever is going to be the last big ticket that we're looking at? That school is going to be, what, 80 years old now?
Franklin?
Yeah. I mean,
This is its last, everything else has pretty much been replaced. The elevator was the last, because when we were talking about whether Franklin would move to the new high school project, we put off doing these kind of things, thinking, okay, well, if it goes to the new high school, and the decision was it would not go to the new high school, so it's going to remain at that site. It only benefits the city to do the work on it, because if we were to leave it, it has to have these things in it. It has to be up to code. So it's really an investment towards a resale if it ever came to that. Right now, it's committed to Franklin Alternative School.
Yeah, I can tell you things have been addressed there. The roof is in good shape. The
flooring,
the HVAC, the heating system, even the exterior was done a couple years ago. So I do believe this is the last big item that would need to be done over there.
Yeah.
do we bus any kids to that school?
Yes. What do you mean bus?
Do they take us school bus to go to that school?
Yes, they do.
But that can't be a very safe place for buses to drop kids off. That, you must be parking in the street. I don't think you got enough room to
Yeah.
really.
No, we park, when I go to the school and visit, I can park right up front. That's open, up front is open and has parking, but all the staff can fit in the parking lot. So
Well,
the
when you-
bus pulls up, basically.
Yeah, but when you're talking, you're talking Fairview School, or you're talking the middle school for unsafe conditions, that over there it's got to fall under unsafe conditions somewhere along the way, because your buses are in the street all the time over there.
There's only one there's not a lot of buses that go.
Well, that's good, huh?
Yeah. No, there's not a lineup at that school, no. I think he might have one or 2 buses.
Very good. And just one other question on elevator, if I could, if Councilor Walker is finished. $1 million 3-stop. Do you have part of this loan process or acceptance is to generate quotes for construction?
Yes, we are going to RFQ for an architect, and so those ads are in the paper. We'll be doing that process shortly, And then after those projects are designed, they will go out to formal bid for
So
the
this is up
construction.
to amount, or not to exceed 1 million?
Correct.
Without the, okay, understand. Thank you very much. Okay.
Quick, I
Councilor Lasagna?
misspoke, this senior community center.
Sorry?
I call it the senior center, it's senior
Oh.
community center.
I don't think anyone's going to hold it against. Very good. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate this. We look forward to hearing what the school committee has to say and having this come back for readings.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Next, under presentations, we have a presentation from Economic and Community Development. Brett and Michael, if you could, on opportunity zones.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to do a brief opportunity zone overview. We'll be going over what an opportunity zone is, how and why the city of Auburn has one, and some of the benefits. We'll be going through the city researched this. We applied for the designation. We lobbied the governor for the zone that we applied for, and then we received that zone. Not all applicants received the zones that they applied for or received the designations at all. This program was a bipartisan program, started actually way back in 2007, and it's had support in the Congress and the Senate from both parties, and started during the Obama administration and was continued with support from the current president. So we have a quick PowerPoint presentation that Brett's going to walk you through, and they follow right along with the handouts that you just received.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mayor and Council. As Michael mentioned, we just wanted to bring to you guys the Opportunity Zone. Maybe just a quick question. Is everybody aware that the City of Auburn had an Opportunity Zone and that this was something available to the city? The Opportunity Zone was created by Congress in 2017 as part of the created in 2017 by the low-income community census tracts. It allows reinvestment of capital gains into an Opportunity Zone project. The capital gains being primarily either the sale of business property or stocks or real estate investments. A few important Opportunity Zone dates. In November 2nd, 2017, the Opportunity Zones were created through the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. In March of 2018, the city applied and petitioned for the Auburn Opportunity Zone located in New Auburn. And in April of 2018, the Opportunity Zones were designated by the governor. Up until recently, there were some questions over different aspects, so the final regulations were published by the IRS in December of 2019. I'll get into the different benefits, but the sheltering benefit ends in 2026, so taxes on the initial investment would be due less the decrease for holding those for 7 or 5 years. The Opportunity Zones expire in 2028, the end of 2028, but you can still keep that investment until 2048 to receive the tax exclusion on the gains of that property. As mentioned, the properties, the locations of the different Opportunity Zones were low-income census tracts. The state could choose up to 25% of the low-income tracts. The governor chose 32 out of 128, which was the maximum Opportunity Zones that could have been chosen. Again, the City of Auburn staff here applied for the New Auburn tract. They petitioned the governor's office and the state DECD, and the city staff currently makes investors aware of Opportunity Zone benefits. It's really a three-prong approach when we talk about the incentives for the Opportunity Zones. The first one is a tax deferral on current capital gains invested until December 31st, 2026. The second incentive is a reduction of taxes due. So if you hold the Opportunity Zone asset for 5 years, you're eligible for a 10% decrease in taxes owed, and if you hold it for 7 years, you do receive 15%. As I make a note right here, in 2026, at this point, the 15% would be off the table because the taxes do come due in 2026, so you can't hold an asset for more than 7 years at this point. So we're at the 10% at this point. The other potential benefit is the increase in value of an Opportunity Zone property is excluded from taxation if held for a minimum of 10 years, and that needs to be sold by that 2048 date. Kind of a quick example of what I just went over. This year, Jane Doe sells stock and has $100,000 in capital gains. $20,000 of that, 20%, would be due with 2020 taxes based on long-term capital gains tax rates. Instead, they invest into an Opportunity Zone fund, and those taxes are deferred until 2026, when Jane pays the reduced rate of $18,000, which is the 10% reduction for holding for at least 5 years. Now we have that final benefit. Jane sells the property after 10 years in 2030 for $150,000. She would have been on the hook for $50,000 capital gains in the amount of $10,000, but that is excluded due to the fact that she has invested in the Opportunity Zone. A little bit of how the Opportunity Zones work. An investor creates or invests in a qualified opportunity fund that can either be an S Corp, a C Corp, or a partnership. And the Opportunity Zone Fund is created by self-declaring you're using IRS Form 8996. We would typically advise consulting with a tax professional if you are considering this, although it's certainly not a requirement. It is a fairly short form in the IRS world, but it is still a little bit involved depending on the size and scope of the project. You have 180 days from the sale of the asset to invest in the Opportunity Zone. There are some requirements to the Opportunity Zone. This is to avoid just land banking property. It's really meant to invest in the community and not just sit on an asset. So there are one of two requirements that it must fulfill. There's either the original use requirement, which would include ground-up construction, vacant property for 3 years prior to the purchase, or any of the brownfield sites. If it doesn't meet that criteria, it could still be an eligible investment if there's a substantial improvement. The example being that if you purchase a property for $150,000, say $50,000 of that is tied to the land, $100,000 is tied to the building, you'd need to make improvements of at least $100,000 within 30 days to satisfy that substantial improvement criteria. 30 months, yes, sorry. A little bit why we thought that New Auburn was the ideal location for this. Again, it's a low-income tract. There are 3 in the city. We have the New Auburn Village Center plan that's coming online. We thought this would be a great marriage of these benefits to put this investment here. Just this spring or summer, we're going to be looking to put out an RFP for a large pad site that's about 120 foot by 40 foot. That would be 2 to 4 stories, depending on what the developer would be interested in doing. So that is something that will take place this year. And then we'll have more sites potential in phases 2 and 3 over the coming years.
And when you talk about the pad site, it's just an undeveloped area? You don't
Correct, yes, yep.
any-
So that was adjacent to, so this is Anniversary Park right here. So, sorry, this orange area right here is that pad site. Yep.
And
Sorry.
just to be clear, so we don't have to do anything to it and create a pad there for building, it just your call?
No, yeah, sorry, yeah, it's just, sorry, yeah.
Question for you.
Sure.
The zoning area down there, I think, eliminates the 2. I don't think they can put a 2 in that area in height.
Okay, I'll have to look at that, but I thought it was T5, but you may be correct.
Could you check it, though?
Yeah, okay, yep, certainly, Counselor. And again, there will be more sites potential for phases 2 and 3. Some other potential opportunity that we have in the Opportunity Zone, we have obviously the St. Louis Church, which we would very much like to see something happen in. We were hopeful that we were going to have this sold recently, but that appears to have fallen through at this point, so we are going to look at some other potentials. We do have some other vacant and retail office space. We've got the multi-unit residential, and there are some vacant lots out in the New Auburn area. To your point, Councilor Walker, there are a mix of different zones, so there's a good mix of potential projects that could be done. That the downtown traditional center and the general business is very conducive to business activity. Then as you get out to the multifamily urban and urban residential, you're looking more at the multi-unit buildings. Recently, as we mentioned, there were quite a few questions. There was a 500-page final regulation released December 19th, 2019, mostly examples of how this can and can't be used in the intention. HUD has recently released a dashboard with info and resources that we will make available on our website, and the Kelly School of Business has released an interactive map to help make people more and more aware of where the opportunity zones fall. We'll continue to grow our website too, to provide resources and information so people can have that available to them. And that's the presentation.
I open up the council, and just a reminder before I open this up to questions, we do have an order a little bit on tonight's agenda, instructing the city manager to create an internal work group to, really work out questions, zoning differentials, issues, and then bring back to the council or planning board or both for action. So, with that, questions, Councilor Rosano.
This seems like a really stellar marketing opportunity. Is that as part of the plan? Will the work group come up with a marketing plan? Do we piggyback on national marketing of opportunity zones?
No, go ahead, Brett. Do you want to say something?
I mean, that would certainly be something to consider. I was just talking to a real estate agent the other day, and they had no idea, to be honest. So I sent them this. I sent them a bunch of other information, because there are savvy investors that know about it, but there are laymen that don't know about it, and that's probably one of the biggest problems right now.
And the opportunity zone itself it's just part of the tools that are out there. The projects still have to be feasible. People that sell property that want to defer to paying taxes on that, they look at those properties, but there's a lot of other opportunity zones. So if you sold property in California, you can take those sales proceeds and bring them up to Maine and vice versa. And as we speak, almost every day, law groups, investment groups are coming up with marketing themselves to market these to help people through them to make money off of those. So it's a work in progress. It took a long time for the final regulations to come into place. It was a little bit of a shame because the clock started a year and a half before the regulations were even put into place.
There's a lot of examples of municipalities promoting that. I have a big part of my visit to DC just a few weeks ago was on opportunity zones. And some of the work is pretty substantial. So I think that should be shared with the group too. And the city manager and I have discussed that.
And so the work group that'll be part of their conversation, or just specifically?
It will be part of the conversation. This is going to be similar to the working group that we had that helped provide advice and guidance to the council regarding the ag zone. We're going to approach it the same way.
The intention of tonight was that a lot of people heard Opportunity Zone, didn't really know what it was, to get that out there. It's never going to be our job to give tax advice to people. That's well beyond us. But to make the board aware, we did apply for this. We were successful. We are using it as a tool, and we plan on continuing bringing that forward for that area.
Any other questions concerning the background on Opportunity Zone? None being? Thank you, gentlemen, very much for this. We look forward to hearing more about this in the future. Next, we have department orientation. We're going to start off with the Office of the City Clerk. Madam Clerk. And we're all going to go up? Okay, then we have Finance Department with Jill Eastman, and then the Office of the City Manager with Peter. Great. And just, this happens every 2 years with the new council, especially during budget season, and just a couple slides on each. I'll turn it over to the City Manager. I'll have my stickers for it.
Good evening, Mayor Levesque and city councilors. I'm Sue Clements Delaire, City Clerk, and I'm going to provide you with a quick overview of the Office of the City Clerk. We have 3 full-time staff members, including myself, Brandon Shalou and Laura Rennie. They're both licensed specialists. Brandon is also the Deputy City Clerk, and Laura is an Assistant Clerk. The Office of the City Clerk is often the first point of contact for the public and considered to be the link between residents and local government. We man the information window and the switchboard, providing visitors and callers with direction and information. We also handle the incoming and outgoing mail for the city. I'm responsible for attending all meetings, preparing the agenda packets, and recording and filing minutes. Our office is responsible for keeping our code up to date and available to the public. Ordinances are updated quarterly. We're responsible for managing board and committee information, recruiting volunteers, attending the appointment committee meetings, preparing the agendas, and recording minutes for that committee. Another major function in our office is voter registration and the coordination and administration of elections. Some of those duties include absentee voting. We start absentee voting 30 days before every election. We have to visit the licensed nursing homes to conduct absentee voting there. Recruiting and training election staff. We will hire anywhere between 35 and 100 election workers, depending on the type of election, whether they choose to work the full day or half a day. It's getting more and more challenging trying to bring new people on. We have to go out and set up the polling places the day before every election. We prepare all the paperwork and supplies for each polling place. We are also required to test all ballots, all tabulating machines, and ballot marking devices before every election. And we also have to attend caucuses. We're responsible for the administration and issuance of business licenses and permits for the city. In 2019, we issued approximately 330 business licenses. We also file marriage intentions and issue marriage licenses. We provide notary, public, and dedimus justice services. One of the primary responsibilities of the municipal clerk is record management and care and preservation of municipal records. We're responsible for filing and carefully maintaining vital statistic records in the city, including birth, death, and marriage records. Some of the challenges and opportunities, multiple polling places. Currently, we have 5 polling places, but we also process absentee ballots centrally, so essentially that is like a 6th polling place. So when it's challenging for a staff of 3 full-time employees to manage basically 6 polling places and the clerk's office. One of my goals in the near future is hopefully to gain council's support in reducing the number of polling places. Doing so would potentially cut costs. It would improve efficiency and lessen or eliminate the concerns of using our schools as a voting place. Another challenge would be recruitment and maintaining qualified election staff. Like I said, it's becoming more and more challenging to find qualified workers that are available and willing to work elections. Wardens and ward clerks have to commit to at least a 16 or 17-hour day. And most of the people that we hire, they're retired, so it makes for a very long day. Another challenge is limited storage space. We have very limited storage space, which you probably saw when you walked through the office. Currently, some of the election equipment that we have is stored at the recreation department because we don't have the room to store it at Auburn Hall. I know that, they need the storage as well, and over the years, some of the equipment has been moved from one location to another. It also results in Public Works having to make several trips to the rec department, either bringing equipment to our office, then back to the rec department, and then, to and from the polling places. So that's been a challenge, and there have been some items that have actually been lost with all the shuffling going on, things like tables and that sort of thing. And another challenge would be staff development and retention. We've had some turnover in the clerk's office over the last couple of years. Both Brandon and Laura have been in the clerk's office for less than 5 months. Training opportunities are sometimes limited depending on the budget and what types of workshops are being offered. We do try to take advantage of scholarship opportunities when we have the chance, try to encourage growth and development with our staff. And we still continue to cross-train with the tax office, so that's been working out well. But again, more than half of the staff between the clerk's office and the tax office are new. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Councilor Gary.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know one of your jobs was record retention and archiving. How is that going, and are we on track?
Yeah, council approved $20,000 last year, so we were able to restore probably nine or 10 books. So, and we were able to get the information on microfiche and a CD as well. So,
cool. How much more do you think we have to work on?
A lot, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Next, Ms. Eastman.
Okay, so finance has, actually, we have 5 divisions. We have administration, which would pretty much be me, which consists of financial oversight, reporting, doing policies, working on the audit and the budget. And then the accounting division, which they do payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, do bank reconciliations, and all other types of reconciliations, work with other departments that have, like, for example, CDBG, they work with CDBG to help them reconcile their accounts and stuff like that. Then we have the tax assessing department, which I'm gonna let Karen Scammon, who's the assessor, fill you in on that when it's her turn. And then we have tax collection, licensing and registration, which is they're really the face of the city. Most of the people who come into City Hall actually come to our office, either to register a car or snowmobile, their dog, pay their taxes. And I think that I actually have one of the best customer service people, or the best customer service people in the state of Maine. And I tell them that, because I don't get complaints about them. People love to come here. They make them feel welcome, and they take care of their needs, and they do it with a smile. And I think they've done a terrific job. And then I also oversee facilities and purchasing, which Derek Belanger, who you've met, takes care of those two things. He's working on a master plan for the city facilities, and he manages and maintains all of the municipal assets. He also takes care of risk management and works with the departments doing RFPs for purchasing RFQs. So I'm going to let Karen give you a few bits of information about the assessing department, and then I'll close out after that.
Good evening. Karen Scammon, City Assessor. Assessors are agents of the state, and so all of our duties are governed by the Maine Constitution. We have a staff of 3 assessors in the office. We are all certified Maine assessors. We have the assessor, deputy assessor, and an appraiser. The assessor and deputy assessor have also attained the advanced status of CMA 3. So we're very proud of our assessing department having these designations. The staff is responsible for evaluation, or it's up on the board here, 9,400 approximate. These are approximate numbers taken off the 2019 commitment. So we have about 9,400 real estate parcels and 1,000 plus business personal property accounts. The real estate valuation, and this is including straight up valuation without the exemptions, that alone just for the real estate is over $2.2 billion, almost $2.3 billion. And our personal property, again, valuation without any exemptions included in it is almost $3.5 billion. So we are responsible for a lot of valuation in the city with just the 3 of us. And it's an interesting task. Our assessing responsibilities include obviously keeping up, maintaining current valuations on all the residential, all the commercial, all the industrial, all the parcels in the city. And we are also responsible for reviewing every deed transfer that occurs in the city, all of the sales that occur in the city. And with our staff of 3, we all review the deeds because we have a structure that says that we try to have all staff members understand and do all of the duties that are required as an assessor in the department so that we all know the job to do and we are all capable of doing it. So we all review all of the deeds. That also helps us with maintaining accuracy so that we, obviously, someone can overlook something, and we are hoping that by the 3rd time around, we have caught that, and we are much more accurate in recording correct ownership, correct changes. The deeds also tell us if properties have been split or merged, and that all has to be, new parcels have to be created. We have to update tax maps with these new parcels or subdivisions or whatever else occurs throughout the city. We are mandated to file state reports, and such as we have a municipal valuation return that we need to file to the state every year. That is a record of just about everything in the assessing department. It's the valuation, it's the individual exemptions, all the special land use classifications, the tax commitment data that was used to, for our warrant and certificate that we provide to the tax collector for tax commitment. All of our abatements, supplemental information, everything is in that municipal valuation return, and the Maine Revenue uses that information for our homestead reimbursement, our Betty reimbursement, and all the other reimbursements that the city receives from the Maine Revenue. Let's see, we are responsible for all of the tax abatement applications. Hopefully not too many come in every year, but we're responsible to process all of those. All the supplemental tax assessments we are due. We prepare and defend valuation at all of the Board of Assessment Review hearings locally, and if we need to go to the State Board of Tax Review, we also have to defend at that level. We have annual review. We do all the annual review of the farmland, tree growth, open space, all of the property that is enrolled in those special land use classifications. We have to review them every year to maintain compliance. And we have about, I'm going to say, maybe 50, and this is just an estimate, about 50 farmland, 50 tree growth, and only 7 or 8 open space at this point in the city. But they have to be maintained every year and redone. We also try to educate the public whenever we get a chance on the process of what we do and why we're doing it. It seems to me that the more they understand, they can understand why their taxes are what they are, and it helps out with abatements and things like that. We also try to educate them and help them fill out applications, exemption applications. We make sure that when there's a new person that purchases a property in the city, we send out a packet of information, and it has homestead exemption in it, and it has, we do a survey of why did you purchase in Auburn? You know, was it the neighborhood that you were looking for? Was it because it was a school that you wanted to be near? So that goes out, all of those, for every single transfer that occurs. We had 766 deeds come through, and that doesn't mean those were all sales, but there are quite a few of these mailings that we put out because we have quite a few sales come through in a 12-month period in the city.
Karen, that what you just said was just piqued, I think, all of our attention real quick. Where are the results of those surveys?
We have them in the assessing department.
Is there any way, Mr. Manager, that we can compile those and review those? Because I don't think, did anybody, council, did we know that was happening, the survey? No? Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we can get
Love
that
to see
together
it.
for you. Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. So with a staff of 3, clearly we're a little busy all the time, and that's okay, but we're hoping that perhaps, let's see, at some point in time, there would be another member of the assessing department, and that's so that we have several projects that we are doing and that we would like to do more of. And if we had another staff member, it wouldn't take so long to complete the projects, which is a good thing, and we could perhaps put a little bit more on our plate and get some special projects done. So that would be awesome. That's about our only challenge right at the moment.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Questions? Mr. Manager?
Jill, you want to continue?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to give you a couple of highlights of our finance department. We have received the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting for 26 consecutive years. I have sent in the application again for 2019. That's an award that we get through the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association. And in order to receive that award, we have to keep our financial reporting up to date. So we have to follow all new GASB rules that come out, Governmental Accounting Standards Board rules, and make sure that we comply with all of those. So we're very proud of that. And we were, I think, the second city in the state of Maine that got it. Lewiston was first, and we were second. And then now there's quite a few, but we're the only two that have been over 25 years. So I also had already mentioned the positive customer service. I think that for part of the department, our customers are more internal. For the accounting staff, we work very closely with all the departments, and I think we provide customer service for those departments as well as for all the citizens of Auburn. One of the struggles we have is we have a lot of needs for capital improvement money, and we have to prioritize those, and that can be a struggle when you get a request for $16 or $17 million a year, and you can only fund between $8 and $10 million a year. So that's one of the struggles that we do. We work with the departments to try to do the best that we can, and in the recommendations that we make to the council. And the next struggle is, and I've talked about it, this is probably year number 4, is succession planning for finance. You'll see in my budget this year, I've requested an extra position so that I can get someone in to hopefully train and be ready to take over when I'm ready to retire. So.
2030 what?
No.
Yeah.
Mr. Manager? Thank you, Jim.
Very good. Thank you, Sue, Jill, Karen. So the city manager's office, our theme is really collaboration, and going to talk about administration of it, collaboration, leadership that we're working on a regular basis. The great team that we have. We have Phil Kroll as the assistant city manager, as you know. Kelsey Earl is the executive assistant. Liz Allen is our communications and compliance manager. Liz probably spends about 80 to 90% of her time on communications and the remainder of her time on compliance. The Auburn Police Department was accredited nationally many years ago to the credit of the former police chief Phil Kroll and his team at the time, and they have managed to maintain that with the support of the council. And our Public Works Department, I think it was a couple of years ago, Dan became nationally accredited by the National Public Works Association. I still think we're the only public works department in the state of Maine to have achieved that. Is that right? So, and that's quite an honor, actually, and I see that in terms of the work that is done by both departments. And I would like to see the fire department at some point become nationally accredited with the support of the council and the mayor. In terms of our mission regarding administration of this city, we are a council manager form of government, the first council manager form of government in the history of Maine. We have oversight in terms of the fiscal management of the city. We're very fortunate to have the services of our finance director and the team that she has. The legal accountability you're familiar with. We get the most, I think, value out of our legal accountability through the work that Michael Malloy does. We also have to, at times, call in expertise on certain other issues, but that is it's an important role that we play. Department oversight, we're fortunate to have the department directors that we do. Phil and I kind of tag team with the departments and the staffs that they have, but you really are very fortunate to have the strong team that you do as department directors and as a city government at every level. Of course, the elected officials, we work with all of you. Municipal, county, and state relationships is a very important part of what we do, and I also want to add their department directors that are also well recognized by their peers around the state and nationally, which I think is a credit to the city. We're involved in personnel and collective bargaining, work closely with Chris Muma, the HR director, Phil Kroll as the assistant city manager, is getting ready for a couple of contracts, or 3 contracts really, that he's going to be negotiating. You'll be hearing more about that in the near future. City partnerships are an important part of what we do. There are a lot of partnerships that the city has. You saw that during the strategic planning process. And then, of course, short and long-term goal setting and strategic planning, which you're all familiar with. It's important to think strategically and to act strategically, and the city manager's office plays a key role in doing that on the strategic plan. There are many department directors and staff with the city that were involved in the strategic planning process, working with you and the people that participated. I think that strategic plan will serve the city well in the next few years until you're ready to update it. In terms of the economic vision and sustainability of the city, we're really fortunate to have a strong economic community development team. We rely on Michael Chamings and Eric Cousins and Brett Sawyer and the team that they have who are focused on economic development. Phil and I meet regularly with Michael, and I think that economic vision that we have for the city is one of our most important priorities. We need to continue to work towards the vision I think all of you share, and that is to be one of the best small cities in America. And I think that we are on a good track at this point in time, and I'm encouraged to see the things that are happening. The full city manager team, we get involved in many things, supporting administrative efforts, managing initiatives like the strategic planning process, the bicentennial parade that's coming up, the 150th celebration that we had last year. Liz Allen and also Jody DeRisco played a key role in the parade that took place, as many of you know, and Liz has been involved in a number of things. Her fingerprints are all over these different events and activities that we've had. The compliance I've talked about. Constituent concerns is something that we get involved in, as do the departments. It's an important part of what we do as a city, and we're looking at how we can strengthen that. We're working now with Rosemary Culo on a system that we think will help us be able to better convey the work that we're doing on constituent concerns and the reporting out that we do to you. Communications, I've talked about that already, but Liz does a wonderful job on communications. The city is fortunate to have her playing the role that she does. There are other communities across the state that are envious of the work that she does. And media relations, of course, is part of that. And all of you, and I will say this, we're fortunate to have a good team effort here and a partnership with all of you on what we're doing with media relations. And the mayor has certainly played an important role with his experience. I'm not just saying that to pat you on the back, Mayor, but the role that you played with the 150th and the work that you do now. is helpful, as is the work that the rest of you do. I mean, I could go across the dais here of the way that all of you impact the community with what you do. Community events, we're involved in lots of community events. We're very fortunate to have a strong team with recreation and sports tourism department that we have. Rec director Sabrina Best loves doing these events and does a great job with the team that they have with Mark Goslin overseeing what they're doing. Website, social media, again, that's something Liz does. Community partnerships, tax acquired properties, something that we have been involved in. Jody DeRisco played a key role in trying to move us forward on that issue. And we do it with, I think, fairness and compassion. You'll hear more about that in the future. We try to work with people as much as we can, but when we reach a certain point where we can't anymore, we take the steps that we have to, so that those who do pay property taxes in the city know that others who should be are doing the same thing. Internships, we've talked about that earlier at the joint workshop that we had with the school committee and yourselves. I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing with that and the effort that is going on. It's, once again, a partnership with the Auburn School Department and Chamber of Commerce, and the overall staff support, that we see across the city and all of the departments and the activities that we have. I know you appreciate that and recognize that. The employees are our most important asset, really, as an organization, and City of Auburn is fortunate to have the people that we do at every level of the organization, and that's it. Unless you have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions about the presentation?
Yeah, I'd like to just ask a question there. That I've heard quite a few complaints, and yet you sit there and say that you don't hardly ever get any complaints downstairs. That little opening down there that people come in to visit and ask questions, the phone system is terrible for most people that try to call here. Now, I know you've been working on it to change things down there, but going back 4 councilors there, 4 years ago, the council at that time really pushed hard to have somebody to answer the phone and to meet people. And I've seen that go to the bottom side in the last couple of years. There was a while that was maintained with somebody pretty darn near 8 hours a day. This last year or more, it has fallen by the wayside. And I know people complaining because I get calls from people saying, how do I get through to City Hall? The phone, no one ever answers the phone, and the directions that they give me are not very good. I checked with the phone, calling it, and I know in the last month you've done some things that have upgraded that, because it was really hard to get from one department to another department. But it still isn't good when you have people coming in here that have to stand there and wait to ask a question or to get directions. It's just, it should be maintained, and there should be somebody there. And there should be a way of making sure that we, have people answering the phone, especially for people calling in.
Councilor Walker, I guess I'm old-fashioned in the sense that I also like to hear somebody's voice, human voice, when I call an organization or an agency, and we're understaffed in that respect. And not because the city clerk hasn't asked for a position, she has. So, the question becomes, does the, city council want to add a position? Because that's what we would have to do, I think. We've tried everything else. We had an organization when I first came here, where we had a volunteer who helped answer the phone and did a nice job. We don't have that situation now, so we would have to add to the budget by creating a position in order to be able to answer the phone, if that's what the council wants.
Yeah, I'm going to defer. We're actually not going to make council action during a communication, or in this case, a presentation. That can come with the city manager's budget if the city manager so desires, and or if the council wants to add that. That is within the council's purview to do so, but just not tonight.
I won't ask for it tonight.
Okay, just getting out there. Any other questions? None? Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank
All
you.
of you, thank you very much for that presentation.
Thank you.
I'd like to open the first open session of the night. Members of the public are invited to speak to the council at any issue directly related to city business, which is not on this agenda. Oh, no, I take that back. No. Yes, first, sorry. Little running off some cliff notes here. So first, open session. Anybody in the public like to speak, please come to the podium. And if you could, limit your comments to approximately 3 minutes. State your name and address for the council if you could. You can actually sit if it's more comfortable for you.
Oh, it's fine here.
Okay.
Greetings, everyone. I respect and value that you're all here today. I know that you've all worked full-time jobs and you're here mostly as volunteers, guiding us here in Auburn and working on our behalf. I too am a volunteer and I work a full-time job during the day. My name is Linda Wooten.
Your address?
Excuse me?
Sorry, what's your name and address?
My name is Linda Wooten. I'm an unenrolled voter here in Auburn, as an Auburn citizen, and I'm also a property taxpayer. I'm in Tim McDonald's. Is that you, Tim? I never met you, but I'm in your ward. Nice to meet you. Okay, so why I'm here, I volunteer to help spread a message and goal of many in our country, state, and city to protect children, particularly the unborn. So I'm here today hoping that I can present to you an ordinance proposal for the city of Auburn to help protect our unborn children here in Auburn. I have ordinance language that would help make us a sanctuary city for the unborn. I know that you all have to discuss it among yourselves, but I'd like to present it to you. There's a problem. The problem is the Supreme Court erred in Roe v. Wade, as there is no language anywhere in the Constitution that even remotely suggests that abortion is a constitutional right. However, the recent change of membership on the Supreme Court indicates that the pro-abortion justices may have lost their majority. The baby in the womb is his own DNA and his own heartbeat and brainwaves after a certain level of development. Taking the life of this baby through a surgical or chemical abortion is the purposeful and intentional killing of an innocent human life. I have a friend on social media who is an abortion survivor. She's an adult now. She has no children of her own, but it's happened too much since Roe v. Wade that there are abortion survivors. So what I'm trying to do, our solution, the Constitution has established the right of self-governance for local municipalities, and where federal and state law is found lacking, cities must take action to protect their communities. There's been other states, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, you may have heard recently, they have 2, 3 sanctuary cities now where the unborn are protected. And I don't believe, I think I said Georgia, Louisiana, I forgot them. There's nobody up north. What I'm hoping is that maybe you can all discuss it among yourselves and protect the unborn here in Auburn from being aborted by making this a sanctuary city. I'd like to end my presentation here with Thomas Jefferson's words: "The good sense of the people will always be found to be the best army. They may be led astray for a moment, but will soon correct themselves." So I'm hoping that you take it seriously and consider talking among yourselves to accept the proposal. I have packets here with background information, citation references. I have some examples you might want to discuss among yourselves.
Thank you. You're right at the 3-minute mark. If you would like to.
Pardon me?
You're at the 3-minute mark. There's a 3-minute cap.
Okay, I'm done.
But I know, perfect timing. If you could please give a copy of what you might have to the clerk.
Absolutely.
And
thank you.
I'll also state in general, if something is to be discussed within the city council, 2 counselors need to submit that, that ask to the city manager and myself for it to be included in either a workshop or a council meeting in order. So just to let you know, that's the process there.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you for your
very much.
time. I appreciate it.
Anybody else in the public who'd like to speak tonight during this very first open session? None being, we'll now move on to unfinished business, which there is none of. Next would be new business. I have order number 31-02242020, which is reappointing Representative Betty Ann Sheets to the Airport Board with a term of expiration of 01/01/2023. At this point, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilor Boss, and a second from Councilor McLeod. Anybody in the public like to speak? None being, I'll bring it back to the council. Any discussion on this order? None being, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor of appointing Councilor McLeod?
Oh, Betty.
I tried to sneak that in there for you. You like that? All those in favor of appointing Representative Sheets to the Airport Board? 6-0. Thank you very much. Moving on, ordinance 01-022422020. Amending the City of Auburn ordinances, Appendix A, fees and charges to reduce the building permit fees for agricultural barns and buildings. It's a public hearing and first reading. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilor Lasagna and a second from Councilor Walker. Open this up to the public. Is anybody from the public who would like to speak? None being. Bring it back to the council. Council, first reading, action taken on this. Sue, we need to take a vote action, correct? Roll call?
Roll call,
Roll call. Is there any comment? None? I'll ask for a roll call vote at this time.
Counselor Lasagna,
Yes.
Counselor McLeod,
Yes.
Counselor Milks,
Yes.
Counselor Walker,
Yes.
Counselor Boss,
Yes.
Counselor Gary,
Yes.
Order passes by a vote of 6-0 on the first reading. Next, we have Order 02-022422020, amending the City of Auburn ordinances for solar energy generating systems in the industrial district. This is a public hearing and, again, first reading. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Second.
A motion from Councilor Walker and a second from Councilor McLeod. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak on this ordinance? None being, I'll bring it back to the council. Council, discussion? Debate? None being, I'll ask the clerk for a roll call vote.
Counselor Lasagna,
Yes.
Counselor McLeod,
Yes.
Counselor Milks,
Yes.
Counselor Walker,
Yes.
Counselor Boss,
Yes.
Counselor Gary,
Yes.
Order passes by a vote of 6-0, first reading. Next, we have Order 32-022422020, authorizing the city manager to create an Opportunity Zone Working Group to draft recommended ordinance zoning and policy changes.
Motion.
Motion for Councilor Walker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilor Milks. Anybody in the public like to comment on this? Not being bring back to the council debate. This is in reference to the order that I wrote and presented to you all last meeting. Councilor Lasagna?
As I mentioned, just making sure that there's a robust marketing aspect to this.
Good. Duly noted. Any other comment, debate? None being, I'll bring it to a vote. All those in favor? Passes 6-0. Next, Order 33-022422020, approving the extension of the city manager's employment agreement through June 30th, 2020. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
I got a motion from Councilor McLeod. I got a second from Councilor Walker. Anybody in the public that would like to speak on this order? None being, I'll bring it back to the council for debate. Clarification, this is to extend our city manager to an end date of June 30th, 2020. No comment. Bring it to a vote. Seriously, no comment? Really? Mr. Manager, you want to give a comment? I mean, you have plenty of time in the next 5 months, but I'll give it to you now. Fine? No comment? Okay. Very good then. All those in favor? Opposed? None being? It's approved 6-0. Next, order number 34-022422020, authorizing the city manager or his designee to exclude the gravel pit lease with execute the gravel pit lease with GIG Aggregates LLC. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
I have a motion by Councilor Milks. Do I have a second?
Can we get a little, explain a little bit about that, please?
Once we get a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second for Counselor Walker. Anybody from the public like to speak on this? None being, I'll bring it back to the council. Mr. Manager? Ken?
So, Public Works over on Grace Lawn Road, we have leased property, approximately 7 acres, for as long as anybody can remember across the street. It's been a pretty relaxed lease in that there were no written language. It was basically a yearly bill would we receive from the previous owner. The 7 acres, we store our winter sand, we store our catch basin grit, we store our recycled asphalt pile, and we also use it as a snow dump. The gravel pit is being sold, and the new owners want a much more formal, long-term lease as part of their financing and part of the insurance requirements that for their mortgage and all of the things that go with that. And we've worked with a city attorney and their attorney to hammer out some language for a formal lease, and that's what this was for. This allows us essentially to store our winter sand across the streets. Depending on the year and the bid, it saves us anywhere from $14,000 to $21,000 in costs just for that one ability to store. It also allows us the opportunity to have a snow dump. We are going to be losing our primary snow dump with the construction of the new high school. Currently, our biggest and best, unfortunately, snow dump that we have available to us is the area behind the high school, behind the tennis courts, and that is no longer going to be an option. So we would have no other snow dump but the small snow dump behind the community little theater that we currently use sparingly, but it's convenient to the main, when we clear Main Street after a storm. That's primarily what that snow dump is used for. All other snow is either trucked to the high school or across the street on Grace Lawn.
Very good. Good. Okay, just hang out, Ty. We probably have some questions. Councilor Walker, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, well, it's asking us to give the okay for the manager to move forward with this. Does that mean you're going to say okay to whatever contract they're coming up with, or do we vote on that contract?
As it states right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, it reads that we're empowering the city manager as designee to execute a contract, negotiated contract with the lease holder, or the property owner.
Well,
Mr. Manager, am I correct on that? Okay.
Without knowing more about the contract and what kind of cost is going to go along with this, I won't support it.
In the info pack, if I could just point out, it looks like negotiated costs are rising from $6,000 to $30,000 annually. Dan? Oh, good, we've got counsel here. Am I
Yes.
correct on that? I'm just reading off the
Yes,
info sheet.
it's a set rate for 20 years.
Set rate, no increase based upon inflation, or yes?
Correct, no increase. It's a
So it'll
set
stay
rate.
at today's dollars at 30,
Correct.
20?
But it also saves on the sand, right? Because you
Oh,
would have to pay an
substantially, yes.
additional $14,000 a year on sand, so it's almost cutting that
Yeah,
cost in
that
half.
additional cost would, because we wouldn't be able to have, we don't have an area to store it, so we would have to pay someone to, similarly to what we do with salt, we have to pay someone, it's an on demand. We call, hey, we need 800 ton, we need 300 ton of salt, we need this. That's the same process we'd have to go through with the sand, and that obviously increases the cost, our bid prices. We bid it that year every year, just in case. We get a number that's favorable, and we don't have to store it, and we don't have to do it all the trucking ourselves, but as it should, as you would expect, it never works out that way.
That 14,000 is an potential increase that's not currently in the budget.
Correct.
In other words, there's no net decrease number.
Right.
Correct.
Yep. And within that 20-year lease, do you have access to the sand there, written into that 20-year lease?
Not, they'll have the property owner will have the opportunity to bid on winter sand for us. There isn't we don't dig the material out of the pit currently. It's, currently we're getting it out of a pit and turner,
They're storing it there.
and we're storing it there, correct?
Is there any other questions? Come on, someone ask questions about dumping polluted snow in the watershed. Yes.
So do we currently use all 7 acres that we have across
Yes.
the street? We
Yep.
couldn't shrink that size down considerably? We utilize all of it?
We utilize, essentially, if you look at if you were driving by and you go by St. Dom's would be on your right, you have our entrances you have that small entrance right next to St. Dom's, which is where we store all our leaves and loam pile. It's on the landfill. The Maine Department of Environmental Protection allows us to do so. And then that next driveway is the city, access to the city pit. The one adjacent to that is the access to the larger, unowned, privately owned pit. That driveway, if you were to go straight in, you would hit our wrap pile. You can see it's the big mountain of old asphalt and concrete. That's ours. And then right behind that is where we store all our sand. The way the lease is written, we can continue to use that area, which is extremely convenient because it allows us to use our own driveway until they have an opportunity to do something, and then it gives us the right to use another area in the pit. We essentially figure out where would work best and that sort of thing. So yes, we do use 7 acres.
And what would happen if we didn't have a place to put snow all winter?
We'd have snow every
We would have to.
Perfect. Done.
We would have to find. We don't have the opportunity not to remove snow. Well, I'll let you field the phone calls if we don't remove snow in certain areas of town. We would have to either purchase or find another area to lease to do so.
Perfect, thank you.
So this would, if they decide to make changes, because they own the property.
Correct.
We have guarantees that we have enough access to be able to do what we want to do there?
Yeah, I'll just speak to that, Counselor. So where we store within the pit, which is much larger than 7 acres, obviously, can change depending on where they're extracting from. Over 20 years, that's going to shift. But we have at least 7 acres, and any movement of our material will be at the landlord's cost, and it'll be their responsibility.
And when you say extraction, so the new owner is going to be using the property for extracting sand and gravel?
There'll be, if you were to look at the pit currently, you can see the telephone poles that are there's a big mound of gravel and there's a telephone pole stuck all the way down. The CMP is actually removing those poles and moving them, so they're actually going to be mining out the remaining gravel in that pit. The area where we store our material has already been, to the best of my knowledge, everything's been removed that's of any value. So chances are, unless there's a development that goes on that site, we won't have to move.
But you can gravel all you want. You just can't build a house.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's
the
for 20
sweet
years.
irony of Auburn.
That's for 20 years, correct? I just don't want them to all of a sudden decide they want to put a golf course in and we don't have
No.
access.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any other questions about the watershed?
I'll just
I
point
can
that
answer
we
that
have a
if you want.
renewal right in addition to the 20 years.
I'd love the watershed portion be great.
So obviously there are rules and regulations with regards to mining, and there's been a full groundwater analysis to this gravel pit, and all the groundwater actually moves away from Lake Auburn in this location.
So in theory, you could build houses there and have no negative impact whatsoever on Lake Auburn.
The runoff may make it to Lake Auburn, but
The runoff, just like the gravel. Oh, geez, okay. 1950s are calling, they want our policies back.
Yes.
I'll bring this to a vote. All those in favor of empowering the manager to execute this lease agreement, please raise your hand. Opposed? Passes by a vote of 5-1. Next, we have a mayor's report. I'm going to keep this extremely short because there's really one thing that is on my mind, and it's going to have dire importance to the city, and that's what our representatives in Augusta decided to do with all these so-called emergency pieces of legislations that aren't really emergencies, and the spending and how that's going to affect our future budget during this supplemental budget period. We've been in meetings with MMA, a lot of correspondence back and forth, and watching that closely. We'll update you more as the legislation session continues. City Council reports. Start off on our left.
2 quick updates. There are events that are coming up. Tomorrow, Tuesday, 6 p.m. in the community room, there's going to be the second public forum for the Court Street study, where there'll be specific recommendations on improving that corridor and asking for public input on those recommendations. So that's tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Then on Friday, the Auburn Public Library's annual Homestead Goods and Farmers Market. It's from 4:30 to 6 p.m. at APL. A lot of good opportunity to support local businesses, so definitely please come. It gets a great turnout, and there are a lot of vendors that'll be there.
I'm sorry, where the Court Street meeting is?
Tomorrow, 6
At-
p.m., community room.
Community room. Thank you very much.
I just know, I think it's at Auburn Public Library because.
Oh, they've moved. Thank you.
The school committee
you.
is going to
Yep.
be in there.
Library. Got it. Thank you very much. Okay, Councilor Walker.
Thank you. I'll make one announcement there. The Auburn Senior Community Center this Thursday, noontime, we'll have a big beef stew lunchtime for you. So if you'd like to come down and eat with us there, we're going to have plenty of it to eat. Come down for 11 o'clock, play a little cards or something with your friends, and then at noontime, we will eat a little lunch, and again, it's beef stew. Then we're going to show a nice movie, so expect to stay there until at least 2 o'clock. So we'll see you this Thursday coming.
Good, thank you. Councilor Carrier's report is short. Go to Councilor Milks.
So, 3 things. The Citizens Advisory Committee had our first meeting to discuss the CDBG, home funds, a number of other things. It's a new folks there, and we've got a follow-up meeting. Next meeting is tomorrow at 5:30. If anybody'd like to come to that, it's going to be over here. The sewer trustee meeting on last week, there has been some testing done downtown with the water runoff system and the sewer. There was some smoke testing done, and there's still connections between the two downtown. They're going to do some additional investigation with some video equipment to determine where the cross connects are. There are going to be some things that are going to come to the city council that are undetermined costs at this point, but the city council, the city is going to have some responsibility for addressing these areas that are challenges that have some cross connects between the two. So that's to come. In addition, the water department had actually a fairly contentious meeting. I was not able to be there. My 2 boys were playing basketball for Edward Little Eddies. Let's go Eddies. Playing for the state championship Saturday night. But there's some disagreements and some things going on with the amount of money that the water department is looking to raise in the upcoming rate increases, and some questions as to the way that the city of Lewiston and the city of Auburn have the breakdown between the two 60-40 splits versus 50-50 splits. And so there was a motion, and I watched the meeting. There was a motion that said we're going to table all that old stuff and we're not going to talk about it anymore. And that 1% of the budget is not really worth discussing, and it's $40,000. And so, in my book, $40,000 is 1%. When I look at the stuff that we've been looking at today, there's 1% adds up. And so, I know that myself and the treasurer was not present, so that motion did pass. But we've got some new members coming in as of next month and some new elections, so I think we're going to readdress that in the future. So that's what.
Thank you. Keep us posted on that. Councilor McLeod.
So tomorrow, there's a school building committee meeting tomorrow night. Let's see, recently we had a Great Falls TV meeting. The council will have a vote to change our bylaws in the next 60 days or so. And I had the pleasure of going down to see Councilor Walker and Councilor Gary and ride the LATC bus from the senior center last week. So they gave probably, I did miss the sandwich, but there was probably 25 or 30 seniors there, and 18 or so went on the public transit trip. So we all got to learn how to transfer buses and use the tickets and stuff. So it's a great service they're starting to put out to try to get more seniors involved in public transit.
Councilor McLeod, is it at 5 o'clock tomorrow?
For the
School committee meeting? I mean, the school building
for the subcommittees.
subcommittees at 5. Are they still meeting?
Yeah, and
regular building committee meeting is at 6.
Okay, thank you. At 6 o'clock tomorrow. The recycling committee will be presenting in the March 2nd city council meeting on their progress and recommendations. The next meeting is on February 27th, this Thursday at 7:30 in the morning. It's, the public is invited at 7:30 in the morning to see what we do. It's a really active group, and I think it'll be interesting to hear what they have to present.
Counselor Gary?
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. If you're over 50 and you can go to lunch at the Senior Community Center, it is a fantastic lunch, and it's filled with people, and it's a great way to meet people. The Valentine's Day lunch was fantastic.
Counselor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a report, but I've got a question to my good counselor over here. Where is the recyclable meeting?
Oh, it's in the bump out room
At
at 7:30 in
7:30.
the morning on
Okay.
this coming Thursday. It's usually every other Thursday at 7:30 in that room. And if people come and we need more room, I'm sure we can move into the community room.
And then one more thing, I had got a call to see if I as a counselor would support an LD that's going to committee to try to change the fee structure on recycling, to switch it from the municipalities to the businesses when they make paper products and things, or whatever the containers are.
So I think that's a resolution we might have missed our chance to participate in that at the state level. Lewiston voted on it, and I can't remember the number of communities that voted to support the resolve. And it is just to say that we want the state of Maine to support having the people who create the plastic and all that, having them take responsibility for underwriting the cost of recycling it. It's not making any sort of definite that we're going to participate in any monetary way. It's just saying we want the state to look into this. Does that sound right?
It does. A little clear. City manager and I were just talking, sitting on the LPC, Legislative Policy Commission for the state. I did not support it because all they're going to do is pass the cost on to consumers. City manager, MMA as a body supported it. So, I mean, we'll all end up paying for it if it happens. So, nothing's free. But yes, so that's the question. So it's already, they have yet to make up their mind in Augusta, but MMA.
Because what little bit of paperwork I was able to find on it just sounded like it's a lot of double talk, and that it was going to set up a fund that there's no guarantee that the municipalities are going to get some of their costs back to help them with the recycling program. The fund will be possibly set up, but it's not a total dedicated to fund. Like a lot of funds that are started in Augusta, they're not locked up so that if the legislature has a rough year, they can't go in and raid it.
Yeah, it's all locked up. You served up there. You know how it is.
Yes.
So, just like MPERS and everything else. So, hey, listen, we're not going to go into the state level politics. If I had my way, we join like New Hampshire right now. So, city manager, your report.
Yes. So, just a few comments. I have started my conversation with the Lewiston City Administrator, Ed Barrett, regarding 911. I'll update you as that conversation moves forward. We are working on the FY21 budget, as you're all aware. And in the not-too-distant future, we'll start the workshops with the departments. I'll be presenting a preliminary draft budget beginning of April. And there will be a strategic plan workshop on March 16th at 4 p.m. at the library. I think all of you are aware of that. Look forward to it. Phil and I will both be there, and a number of the department directors who are directly impacted by the strategic plan and/or their deputy directors will also be present. And for the rest of the Mondays in March, we have meetings, as I think you're all aware, beginning next Monday, which is a regular meeting. We'll have a workshop on the comp plan and charter discussion, as well as other items. And then March 9th, we are doing a tour of the Norway Savings Bank Arena, also the Hasty and Senior Center, or Senior Community Center, I should say, the Ingersoll Turf Facility, and there will be an orientation as part of that. We will probably, I think we'll probably start with recreation, and we'll end up at the arena. And then March 16th, we'll have a regular meeting. We have a library tour and orientation. That's the evening we're going to have the strategic plan discussion. We'll start that at 4 o'clock with everyone's cooperation. And then March 23rd, we have the joint CIP presentation and discussion with the school committee. So there's a lot going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to skip through Jill Eastman's Finance Director report for January 2020, simply because City Hall did not have internet today, and I wasn't sure if you all had enough time to download and review properly. So we'll have that next week. Thank you for being flexible on that. Second and last open session of the night, members of the public are invited to speak to the council about any issue directly related to city business, which is not on this agenda. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak? Anybody from Auburn Water District who'd like to explain their vote? No? Okay. I'll now close this open session. We do have one executive session left on the agenda tonight. There was another one about economic development, which is going to be pushed back due to the internet issue. Correct still? Okay. Very good. And we already handled the personnel matter. So at this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to enter into executive session to discuss a legal consultation pursuant to 1 MRSA, Section 405, 6E. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion from Councilor Boss and a second from Councilor Gary. All those in favor? Now stand in executive session. This will be the last agenda item on the night tonight, so we'll be coming back to adjourn. Do we have internet back at City Hall?
I don't think so.
Testing. Rose, are we online?
It came on earlier.
It was on earlier.
The whole meeting.
Go ahead,
They were
Mayor.
broadcasting.
Now declare the council out of executive session. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? All those in favor, just say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We now stand adjourned.